a board member of the Earth Science Women's Network, a nonprofit that's been working in the last couple of years with AGU on their initiatives to address sexual harassment, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. And is there a little thank you? Holding it backwards. So women are disproportionately underrepresented in the earth and space sciences, and especially women of color are even more grossly underrepresented in the geosciences. We heard how the geosciences is the least diverse field in STEM. Women make about almost 40% of bachelor's degrees in the geosciences, but only 20% of tenure track faculty. And if you look at more carefully, women of color, those numbers are really, really low. And there are many factors that contribute to why we have such low numbers of women and women of color in the geosciences. I'm going to talk about one of them today, which is a hostile climate that many women, and especially women from underrepresented groups, face during their careers. 71% is the number of respondents of a recent field survey that reported experiencing sexual harassment or inappropriate comments doing field work, and a lot of these were students. 26% is the proportion of those respondents that reported experiencing physical sexual assault while doing field work for their research or their education. More than half of almost 500 respondents from my organization, the Earth Science Women's Network, reported experiencing sexual harassment at some point during their career. And at my university, there's been a national survey of universities across the country, but at my university, 37% of female graduate and professional student respondents to the survey reported experiencing sexual harassment from their advisor, mentor, or supervisor. And one of the factors that contributes to kind of the prevalence and persistence of sexual harassment and other forms of bullying and discrimination, this hostile climate in academic institutions, are these institutional structures that promote this master apprenticeship model from medieval times, right? And so students, postdocs, trainees are dependent on their advisors and supervisors professionally, financially, and if you're an international student, even legally. So there's these institutional cultures and structures that really create these great power imbalances. And if the offender happens to be a superstar who's bringing great prestige and funding to the university, then abusive behavior is allowed to continue for decades without any effective disciplinary action. So scientific societies, and AGU has been taking a leadership role in this field, have the opportunity to try to change cultural practices that can ultimately lead to institutional change back at our home institutions. And they can do this by codifying ethical behavior in a code of conduct, enforcing sanctions on violations of that code of conduct, and also educating its members and the broader community about the prevalence of the problem and strategies for how to address it. And actually this year, AGU has launched a new social media campaign to bring awareness of sexual harassment, #SaveAGU. And so AGU, I think one of the problems is that as scientists, we tend not to think of ourselves as social actors in a social enterprise, right? And a lot of professional societies have a code of ethics, but it really just deals with data falsification and plagiarism. And so AGU right now is revising their code of conduct to deal with how we treat each other in this social enterprise and actually think about including harassment, bullying, and discrimination as part of scientific misconduct. And by providing the gold standard of what professional behavior as a geoscientist is, then scientific societies can really be a role model for the rest of the community. In the meantime, there's a lot of things that we as individuals and we as part of the geosciences community can do. And probably the most important thing is to believe our colleagues and our students and our peers when they confide in us that they've been sexually harassed. Right? Really important to believe that this is happening. And to offer our support. We can offer our support by providing them access to people and resources to respond to instances of abusive behavior. And we can also think about how we can safeguard the professional, emotional, and physical being of targets of harassment. We can speak out in many different ways. We can educate others about the problem. We can speak out and tell people in positions of power when we say things are happening. We can call out abusive behavior as we see it. And we can speak out in support of targets of this problem. And then finally, we can also try to be courageous, and it takes a lot of courage to report incidences of abuse, and also to keep people in positions of power accountable. And ultimately, just want us to think about that there really is no such thing as totally blanking out on my last sentence. That's embarrassing. Sorry, this is like my third event this day, so I'm pretty tired. But ultimately, yeah, there's no such thing as a well, there's no such thing as not being an involved bystander. Basically, like you can't just say, well, I've just seen this, I'm not engaged because it didn't happen to me. You really have to participate and think about how we can change the culture and ultimately institutional structures. Thank you.
She's from the University of Maryland, and up on deck is Robin Lopez.